one of the criteria certainly that we use to judge good literature versus bad literature is it's persistent. It continues to be relevant over time, which is to say its resilience. And so we can suggest that complexity probably has something to do with that, right? A more complex work is going to be more resilient. On the other hand, that's sort of deceptive, because if you read something like a Cormac McCarthy novel, it doesn't seem very complex. In fact, it seems deliberately uncomplicated. He repeats like the same sentence in Blood Meridian something like 96 times. They wrote on. But where the complexity lies, it's not necessarily in sentence structure, it's not necessarily even in plot. It has to do with his ability to provoke all kinds of different connections, right? And the reader's ability to make those kinds of connections, right? So Emily Dickinson is an interesting example because her poems on the surface seem very, very straightforward. They tend to follow the same rhythm. She uses, she's almost always uses iambic instead of trochaic rhythm. So it's the dun-dun, 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 instead of dun-dun, dun-dun of a march or something like that. She uses hymn meter, so her meter tends to be very stable and unchanging. Hymn meter is the meter that we use to sing songs like Amazing Grace, right? So you can pretty much put any Emily Dickinson song into, a hymn melody and it'll sound right. So most people read a Dickinson poem and they think, oh, this is a beautiful poem about a dog or a flower or a child or her relationship with God. But if you look at it more closely, the complexity lies in her choice of word, right? So she might take a particular word. Slant is one that she uses often. And man, that word then just runs off in all kinds of different directions. Slant refers to the kind of rhyme that she uses. So she uses something called slant rhyme. So it's these words almost rhyme, but not quite. So she might use, the word town and then the word noon. Almost rhyme, but not quite. She's referring to slant in the sense of, things being at an angle where you might look at something and see it as sort of strange or peculiar because you're not looking at it straight on. She's referring to that sort of strategy in her poetry to make something seem like it's about this when it's really about that, which is a little bit crooked, a little bit slanted, a little bit off. And it's sort of all of those things at once. And you can't ever really decide what she means in that particular moment because she doesn't decide, because she sort of chooses not to choose. And that's complexity, right? Which is why we keep going back to Dickinson over and over again. And the openness of her text, the unpin-downable characteristics of her poetry, continue to make it relevant.